Hello everyone, my name is MD and this is the Fourth Branch Project, the first and only program dedicated exclusively for those with common sense, a spirit of patriotism, and a dedication for a more perfect union. Earlier we were talking about the similarities between Adolf Hitler, Chancellor of Germany in 1933, and Donald Trump, the 45th President of the United States. Now, since I started this documentary, today this is part 5 of the documentary. Since I started this documentary, it is probably pointless to say that I have had a number of reaction, mostly from Donald Trump supporters, and needless to say that all of them are negative. I am not surprised, or I'm not concerned about the reaction, because interestingly enough, the parallel that being discussed in the documentary will show that this very environment created by the Donald Trump cult-like supporters was actually pretty much identical to what was going on with Adolf Hitler in 1933. So before I move forward and continue the discussion, there are two things that I will be doing. Number one, I will kind of give, as I do in every time that I have a chance to host this program, is to give a sense as to the objective of the program. And the second thing that I will do is kind of give a refresher of the last episode of the documentary we discussed. It's just a way to kind of bridge the gap between if you watch or didn't watch the previous episode, or didn't look at the video, at least you get a sense as to where we are going. Number one, I do want to emphasize the fact that the Fourth Branch Project is not a Democrat project, it's not a Republican project, it is an American project. This project was actually conceived well before Donald Trump even ran for public office. And the objective of the project is to work towards a more perfect union. In other words, every topic that we discuss, and it's going to be mostly social, political, and I'm sure over time we will pepper it with other topic, not for the sake of changing the objective, but rather to diversify and makes it a little bit more interesting. But the objective, the goal of the project will stay the same until we accomplish or we reach that objective. So the objective, again, is to work towards a more perfect union. Now, in order to achieve that, we have taken the step to attempt to remove the obstacles that prevent that from happening. And if you have been following this program, and in case you haven't, I would strongly encourage that you visit the People Branch YouTube channel. All the past videos are posted there. And there was a section where we actually had 3 series on that section where we identify the problem that the obstacles rather for the to achieve a more perfect union. And I'll quickly mention is, and that problem is called ignorance. I am certain at this point, especially if you have watched some of those announcements, you would notice that I put a great deal of emphasis on pointing out this very problem, because the biggest stumbling block to achieve a more perfect union is ignorance. Ironically, ignorance doesn't translate to people who didn't go to school, and it doesn't translate to people who didn't go to college. In fact, I joke a few times with a few colleagues, and I said that the worst thing to try to reason with an ignorant with a college degree, because it is very difficult, because most people tend to think just because you went to college or you have a college degree, some a master or even a PhD, that doesn't translate to not being ignorant. And the reason that we set out to eradicate ignorance is for the very reason that a number of people who have not even watched this series that I'm currently debating, debating the similarities between Donald Trump and Adolf Hitler, people who have not even watched it, people who don't even have any inkling as to what this is about, already shrug it off, already ignore the idea as being preposterous. And let me assure you, I spent a great deal of time studying world history. And again, as I mentioned, this is a project that started well before Donald Trump became president of the United States. So during the 2016 primaries, that's when it dawns on me that the way that Donald Trump speaks, the kind of approach that he took is directly parallel to what Mr. Adolf Hitler was doing. It was something that I was doing very slowly, very gradually, because in my wildest dream did I think that Donald Trump would ever become president of the United States. So, and as soon as that happened, so I picked up the pace and I began researching at a much faster rate the detail of the similarities and the differences between Donald Trump and Adolf Hitler. The second point I will make is we do not address any topic. We do not discuss any topic just for the sake of discussing it, just for the sake of talking about it. And we always have a goal behind talking about it. Of course, the ultimate objective is to work towards a more perfect union. And doing that, in doing that, we have to remove obstacles. And the biggest one we have found so far is ignorance. And ignorance is not anything new. In fact, I was reading earlier about this philosopher Confucius, who was born in the 479 BC. He said that real knowledge is to know the extent of one's ignorance. So it is difficult when someone believes that they already know, when in fact they don't know. And until you learn the detail of any conversation, then you are completely ignorant of the topic. And in terms of the comparison, we're not doing the comparison just for the sake of doing the comparison. We're doing it because we want to remove the obstacle that exists today, and which is ignorance. Most people know of Adolf Hitler as a dictator, as a monster, as someone who, if you so believe, because a number of people don't, if you so believe, that killed 6 million Jews, and so on and so forth. But the detail behind that individual is not actually readily available, so people just gloss over that, and as far as they're concerned, that's good enough. And that's the reason, since I announced the debate or the discussion to show the similarities between Donald Trump and Adolf Hitler, most Trump supporters have simply ignored, shrugged it off, cursed me. In fact, a number of them have completely stopped following me on Twitter and Facebook because they figure out, why would quote unquote listen to that damn liberal? Now, for sake of conversation, I'm no Democrat and I'm no Republican. I am an American citizen who is concerned about the well-being of the country. That's as simple as that. So the very purpose of the fourth branch is to address any socio-political issue, whether it comes from Democrat or it comes from Republican, and bring a solution to that particular problem. Well, actually, I should say suggest a solution, because I'm not in any position to implement any solution. One thing that you would not find with the fourth branch project is we do not curse, we do not yell, we do not scream, but we do not mince words either. Translation, we're not here, this project is not here to sugarcoat problems. We're not here to massage anybody's ego, to massage anybody's fragile emotions in order for those people to feel good about themselves. There are already enough entity out there, and for the Trump supporters, and I'm very certain that if they tune into Fox, they don't have to worry about their fragile ego being bruised or being attacked, their fragile emotion being not being massaged, because Fox is there and that's all it does. Now, the problem is it doesn't achieve anything good for the country. I usually like to ask the question, and it is a relevant question before discussion of any topic, because again, the fourth branch project seeks to achieve a more perfect union. The very question is, are you a patriot? And by that, I don't mean you stand for the national anthem and you put your hands on your chest and then you declare that you are a patriot. That's not what I meant. A patriot is actually someone who makes sacrifices. Standing, putting your hand on your chest for the national anthem is not a sacrifice. And that's not what I meant. I meant, are you a patriot? Are you willing to give up whatever is so convenient for you to hold on to, your ego, your pride, and to defend others who us who suffer of wrongdoing. That is patriotism. Patriotism, true patriotism, is to achieve true patriotism, everyone, we all should support the movement, the action of those, or even those we disagree with. That is what patriotism is. For instance, when Mr. Trump went after the NFL players for kneeling to protest police brutality, now supporting Trump is not patriotism. Supporting Trump is actually encouraging a behavior that is unpatriotic, because if any group, any individual suffers wrongdoing in the hands of our government, it is the duty of everybody else, of all other groups, to support the the group which is victim, to prevent the government from continuing in that path. Because today it's group A, tomorrow it may be your group, so you wouldn't want, or you would need, other citizens of the country to stand with you so that they can defend you from wrongdoing of the government. That's what patriotism is. It's not standing. In fact, standing for the national anthem and putting your hands on your chest is a symbol of pride, is a symbol of nationalism. It is not patriotism. So having said that, this project is not for the purpose of caressing your ego, or managing or massaging your emotion. We're not in that business. We are interested in achieving a more perfect union, and we are under no illusion that everybody will fall in line, everybody will have the same sentiment, because we are well aware of the history of the country. In fact, I always like to use the Civil War as the perfect example, that at a point when it became clear for a group that slavery was bad, there were still millions of others who would rather die than doing the right thing. We would rather die than being on the right side of history. So I'm well aware of the fact, as I'm talking today, that there are millions of people today that are still in the ignorance lane, that still believe that what they stand for, what they're doing is right, when in fact, if their eyes could be open, if they could just look for 1 second, they would realize that they are on the wrong side of history. So the question is, are you a patriot? It is, this project is actually geared mostly towards those who are more concerned about the country than they are concerned about their political party, than they are concerned about a particular individual. For sake of reference, at the time that I encouraged Donald Trump candidacy, which was before even the first presidential debate, so you can see how far that is. Before the first presidential debate, by then I had already written 2 articles that encouraged his candidacy. And a few months later, when Huffington Post decided not to cover Donald Trump in the regular coverage, political coverage, but rather just shove it to the entertainment section, I had also written 2 articles to argue with Huffington Post. Then that's not actually appropriate for a newspaper to do that, because I surmise that maybe, just maybe, what would they do if he becomes president? Where would they cover him? So for those who today feel that they ought to bash me as a damn liberal, those people weren't even on Trump bandwagon. In fact, 95% of the country at that time, at the time that I was supporting the candidacy of Donald Trump, 95% of the country consider him a joke and consider the possibility of him going any further an impossibility. So none of those of any individual today who feel that they have the right to say anything because I'm treating a topic that they seem not to like, none of those people has any such right, because I was at the time that they wouldn't even touch Donald Trump, encouraging his candidacy. So, but I also knew at which point that his candidacy should have been ended. So I'm not a Democrat, I'm not a Republican. I am an American citizen that watches for the well-being of the country. And this project, this program is geared towards people of similar sentiment. In other words, I'm not expecting any Trump supporters to feel that treating a topic like that, and there will be plenty of other such topic to feel that it's they feel good about it. But I am addressing people who feel that they are American first, not a Republican, not a Democrat, not just a Trump cult follower. Because this is not for this type of individual, because I'm not expecting much from them. What I'm hoping to achieve, despite what I just say, what I'm hoping to achieve is to remove ignorance, because ignorance is the biggest factor that actually put the Trump supporters where they at, is the biggest factor in that equation. But the ignorance that's currently that seems to spread within the Trump world is not something that happened by accident, and it's also a topic that I address, and I actually reveal the sources of their ignorance. And it is important to remove that obstacle, because I think I may have mentioned in a number of occasions that the biggest threat to democracy is ignorance. This is not a joke. The biggest threat to any democracy, not just in the United States, the biggest threat to any democracy is ignorance. In fact, JFK, John F. Kennedy, was almost a prescient in his speech. He did mention at some point that the ignorance of one voter in a democracy impairs the security of us all. The ignorance of one voter, ignorance of just one voter in a democracy impairs the security of us all. Now, if you extrapolate the ignorance of one voter, now extrapolate that to the ignorance of millions of voters, and you get a picture of what actually that meant. Now, I decide to discuss the similarities between Donald Trump and Adolf Hitler for a couple of reasons. One, George Santayana said that those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. Now, how could you possibly remember the past? Some of us were not even born at the time that Adolf Hitler was Chancellor of Germany. Now, of course, having taken a cue from George, I actually have a different twist to that same statement. Say those who ignore the past will be forced to relive it. So to me, it's a little bit more contemporaneous to have that statement, those who ignore the past will be forced to relive it. So you didn't have to be there when Hitler was Chancellor of Germany, but you can learn about the past or you can ignore it. But if you ignore the past, you most likely will be forced to relive it at some point. And me personally, I'm not inclined to relive any such past. I mentioned on top of this program that I'm a fan of world history, so I spend a great deal of time reading history, world history, and it wasn't difficult for me the minute I started following Donald Trump to realize that he is comparable to Adolf Hitler. So that's the reason that I'm actually doing this documentary to educate and to bring a conclusion to this very moment that we're going through, that a number of individuals, millions of them, don't seem to realize the danger of such situation. And again, it is because of ignorance. So I know ignorance is dangerous, and the reason it impacts me is, and I think I may have expressed that in an expression as well, say ignorance is not personal and is not private. In other words, if your next door neighbor is ignorant, don't consider that that's not your problem, because the next door neighbor ignorance actually may impact you in very great way. So that's the reason I take upon myself to address the situation of ignorance in the country, so that the impact, and some could be pretty big, the impact, and I may not be around, but I do want to leave for the next generation. I do have children. At least I do want to leave for the next generation a better environment or a more perfect union. Again, I'm not under any illusion that everybody understands that or everybody will have the same sentiment. In fact, what I have been, the kind of reaction I have been getting from Trump supporters would suggest that I just stopped the whole thing altogether. But I remember also the civil war in this country. There were millions of people who opposed slavery, and there were also millions of people who wanted to keep it around. So the country has always, there has always been people who want to be on the wrong side. And today, the Trump supporters are on the wrong side of history. And this is the time for me to help change that. And ignorance is the biggest stumbling block, is the biggest obstacle that I set out to remove. We will come back shortly to continue with the conversation in regards to the similarities between Donald Trump and Adolf Hitler, because it's that important. We need to know what history has. We need to know whether we're heading to the same end as with Donald Trump as Germany went with Adolf Hitler. I am MD, and you are watching the Fourth Branch Project, the first and only program which is dedicated exclusively for those with common sense, a spirit of patriotism, and a dedication for a more perfect union. I'll be right back.
I'm Jeff Gannett, CEO of Macy's, and I wanted to take a moment of your time to thank you for being such an amazing customer. because I truly believe that Macy's customers are the greatest in the world. Recently, you said you wanted a simpler rewards program. Well, I'm here to say that we've heard you. And starting this month, we're introducing the new and improved Macy's Star Rewards, a reimagined, simpler rewards program starring you. You said you wanted more savings. All members at every level get 25% off any day you choose with Star Passes. You said you wanted free shipping. Gold status means getting free shipping with no minimum, plus the silver status benefit. You said you wanted better rewards. Platinum status means 5% back in rewards every day on all Macy's merchandise, no exclusions, plus gold and silver status benefits. We want Macy's customers to know they are the best customers in the world. And we want each and every one of our cardholders to know that with the new Macy's Star Rewards, it is your time to shine.
Meet the new Macy's Star Rewards, exclusive to cardholders. Discover your status today at Macys.com/Star Rewards.
I'm telling you, Michael Jordan himself was right here in my McDonald's. I fixed him the very first McJordan special. Right, Bill? I did. I took a quarter-pound of pure beef, smoked bacon, cheese, and some of my favorite barbecue sauce, and I named it the McJordan Special.
Bill, the sandwich, definitely great.
Yeah, but you got the cooling with that story. But it's true.
How you doing, Bill?
Hi, Michael. Michael.
The McJordan Special for a limited...
Whoa! That is some group of people. Thousands. So nice. Thank you very much. That's really nice. Thank you. It's great to be at Trump Tower. It's great to be in a wonderful city, New York. And it's an honor to have everybody here. This is beyond anybody's expectations. There's been no crowd like this. We used to have victories, but we don't have them. When was the last time anybody saw us beating, let's say, China in a trade deal? They kill us. I beat China all the time.
Donald Trump has transformed America in ways no one could ever anticipate. One can only guess where the country will be at the end of his presidency. We have, however, captured the journey to the Oval Office in the book entitled Defiant for America. They said he didn't have the guts to run for public office. He proved them wrong. They said his presidential bid would not last a few weeks. He proved them wrong. They said he could not become the nominee. He proved them wrong. Get a copy of this book and follow Donald Trump in his journey to make America great again. Found at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, everywhere online. Get your own copy today. Don't go anywhere. The Fourth Branch program will return in just a moment. Join me here on the Fourth Branch at 10:30 a.m. and 6:30 p.m. every Saturday.
After reading several books based on presidents and on Obama specifically,
I found that they're typically partisan. The Obama legacy targets the heart of the issue by giving credit to the president where it's due, but definitely coming down hard on Obama on his bigger failures, like his handling of the Syrian crisis.
If you are in college, going to college, you are an educator, a faculty member, or someone with interest in government or politics, The Obama Legacy is definitely a book to read.
My professor recommended The Obama Legacy.
A friend actually recommended The Obama Legacy.
I would highly recommend this book for anyone, whether for academic use or leisure reading.
I would recommend this book to anyone out there searching for an impartial and unbiased look into Barack Obama's tenure as president.
I would definitely recommend this book as a good read for both liberals and conservatives.
Your one item would be the Name Your Price tool?
It helps people save on car insurance. Why wouldn't it save me?
Why? What would you bring? A boat?
Huh.
Ignorance, they say, is the biggest threat to any democracy. Indeed, it is. Plato, a Greek philosopher born in 427 BC, said that ignorance is the root and stem of all evil. Today, members in the Republican Party wear ignorance as a badge of honor, while the rest of the country watch powerless the destruction of a country which was once the envy of the world. The media is the enemy of the country, said Donald Trump. The Democrat legislators are obstructionists for not going along with everything the president wants. The Department of Justice is biased for investigating corruption in the Trump administration. This is the United States of America. Any question?
Wayfair, you've got just what I need. Everything from my home, you got it for me. I never see selection quite like this. Every color and size in my mind. They got every single thing on my list. And with 70% off, who knows what I'll find. Wayfair, you've got just what I need. Everything from my home, you got it for me. Wayfair, and the shipping was free. Now my home's the home I want.
From all of us at Wayfair, find what you need today.
Hello everyone, I am MD and this is the Fourth Branch Project, the first and only program which is dedicated exclusively to those with common sense, a spirit of patriotism, and a determination for a more perfect union. The Fourth Branch Project seeks to emphasize country over party. Its primary objective is to restore interest in civic duty and involvement in social, political issues, discussion, debate, which might impact lives in this generation and quite possibly in future ones. Put differently, the Fourth Branch Project is a journey towards restoring America's greatness, where patriotism is the foundation of every decision, every policy, every word, every action. Said differently, it is a journey to save democracy in America. Stay with us. We will be right back. You are on the Fourth Branch program debating the similarities between Donald Trump, 45th President of the United States, and Adolf Hitler, Chancellor of Germany in 1933. Let me give you a brief refresher of what we talked about earlier before we continue the details on Adolf Hitler. I do want to also repeat the fact that we have all previous videos available on the People Branch YouTube channel. That is People Branch on the YouTube channel for all previous video, not just about the particular topic, but all previous topic that we talked about, including the topic on ignorance. Now, just a refresher that we were at the point where Adolf Hitler was actually released from jail after World War I, and he became the leader of the DAP, which is later become NSDAP, which is the Nazi Party. But before that, I guess a brief overview is Adolf Hitler's childhood was very tragic. He lost 3 siblings when they were, not only he was a child himself, but those siblings were babies and toddlers. And at a very young age, he lost his father, was the only breadwinner, and when 1 year later he lost his mother, and he pretty much became vagrant. He pretty much became homeless, and he had to be scraping money in order to get a few penny and survive. And growing up, Adolf witnessed how wealthy individuals live, and it so happened that those people were mostly of Jewish descent, and they had a lavishing life, a plushy life, a luxurious life, while he was there watching all that happening, scraping for food. Now, when he later joined the armed forces, I believe he may have been, I don't know, Adolf Hitler was born in 1891, and he actually had to join the armed forces around 1914, 1915. So he was still a pretty young guy, 21, 22, probably. And as soon as he actually joined, just a couple of years later, he found himself going to war. That was World War I. So when he came back from war, he was decorated for his service, but his country suffered a very serious defeat, to the point that Germany was slapped with a war reparation fee by the League of Nations, which was the name used previously by United Nations. Well, that was actually what it was, but it used to be called the League of Nations. So Germany, after suffering a serious defeat in the war, at the Treaty of Versailles, was forced to abide by the treaty and had to pay war reparation fee to all the countries that they had caused damage during the war. Now, Adolf Hitler wasn't having it. He didn't like the idea, so at some point he decided to try to overthrow the government. So in 1923, well, actually after the war in 1919, Adolf Hitler, whether it was because of his dissatisfaction with the armed forces, or because he feels that he belongs someplace else, but nevertheless, in 1919, he joined the German Workers' Party. That was a party, kind of a prelude for what would later on become the Nazis, the Nazi Party, known under the abbreviation of NSDAP. But in any case, as a leader of the party, Adolf Hitler found welcome ears to the idea of overthrowing the government, and he used what I referred to in earlier as villain. He created villain the same way here in the United States. Donald Trump managed to rally a group of people behind him by creating villain. The Mexican, the illegal immigrant coming across the border, the tariff trade war with China is gonna change the whole thing. It's gonna cancel the trade with Mexico, with Canada, and it's gonna have brand new trade and so on and so forth. It's gonna make America great again. So both Donald Trump and Adolf Hitler had the same approach to doing things. So they had to create a villain in order to rally people around them. So that's exactly what Adolf Hitler did. He created a villain. So and that villain was, at that time, the Treaty of Versailles, which forced Germany to pay war reparation fee. So Adolf Hitler saw it as a humiliation to Germany, and he used that as his base to rally people, because a lot of Germans felt the same way, but they would not dare going that route. But Adolf Hitler not only used that as a springboard to get to get actually a troop to support his idea of overthrowing the government. So in 1923, sure enough, Adolf Hitler attempted to overthrow the government. He was thrown in jail. So there in jail, Adolf Hitler dictated his autobiography under the title Mein Kampf, which is a German word meaning my struggle. But what impacted Adolf Hitler's life is not only his childhood, that was a very tragic childhood, but there are a number of anecdotes that also anger Adolf in regards to the state of affairs with his family. His father was the only breadwinner, but there were rumors, never confirmed. In fact, historians always stay clear of that story, that his mother, Adolf Hitler's mother, was a maid at a Jewish house, at a Jewish family. And Adolf Hitler seemed to have hated that story. In fact, in his autobiography, he never addressed that issue, and yet that story continued to be circulated around. So his childhood was affected, and he hated the lifestyle that the Jews had, because they, and that's what he used also to rally those the Nazi group around him, because he blamed them for the state of the country. Does that sound familiar to you? Adolf Hitler actually put on the Jews the the economy problem that the country was going through, because the Jews took all the wealth, enjoy all the opportunities, all the luxury, including, interestingly enough, including the fact that despite that Germany had to pay war reparation fee, the wealthy were spared. They didn't have to chip in. And Adolf Hitler was angry about the whole thing. And according to history, he was also very charming. He was very charismatic. He was a good orator. So put all that, the anger from his childhood, the kind of thing that he observed, he witnessed on the street. He lived it, he experienced it. So it's not something that anybody was telling him. He experienced those things. Now he is in a position, as a leader of a party, he is in a position to do something about it. Unfortunately, the coup that he attempted, he was thrown in jail. 1 year later, when he was let go, he continued on the path of, he was still the leader of the party, and in fact, he became more admired by his supporters because everything that he was saying, propping up the pride, the German pride, it was something that he used as his main focus, but he also not only he was talking about being humiliated by the Treaty of Versailles, but he also was going after the Jews for taking all the wealth of Germany, and he was going after communism. He was going after he was propping German pride in order to get all those individuals for to stick with him. So, as the leader of the party, of course, he I'm sure aspire at some point to become the leader of the country. So the Nazi group enjoy a plurality in the country, but there wasn't but the Nazi was not the majority. So they had two bodies, just like here we have the Congress and the Senate. They had the Reichstag and the Reichsrat. So the Reichstag was presumably Congress, and then Reichsrat, if I pronounce that correctly, was Senate. So, but the Nazi at some point, as a matter of fact, in 1933, when actually Adolf Hitler was finally going to be crowned as a chancellor of Germany, there were just 3 Nazi members in the government cabinet. So there were not a lot of them in the government, but in Reichstag, there was a plurality of Nazi. So Adolf Hitler had to figure out a way to get somewhere, because he was in a position where being the leader of the Nazi party would not necessarily do much for him, because as long as Nazi was not in the majority, there was really very little opportunity for Adolf Hitler to actually become anything in Germany. So something happened. Now, Hindenburg, he was a general in the armed forces, and he actually I am referring to Hindenburg, that von Hindenburg, I think it's Paul von Hindenburg. He was a general in the armed forces, but he retired in 1911. I do have to talk about him because there is a certain connection between Adolf Hitler rise to power and Paul von Hindenburg. So Paul retired in 1911. So he I guess he served his time, and he really didn't want anything to do with military anymore. But unfortunately, when World War I broke, he was summoned to help. Of course, as German, his country is in trouble, and they asked him to help. Why not? Of course, he's a patriot, so he would defend his country against all enemies. So he came back to help, and in fact, he is a very shrewd strategist, and he knows when to advance, he knows when to retreat, and he knows when he's not going to win the war. In fact, it is attributed to him to have saved the lives of a number of soldiers, because during the war, if you recall World War I, there was a time that the German army was advancing and conquering neighboring countries. So a number of neighboring countries were being acquired, or conquered rather, and there are two reasons that Germany actually went after a neighboring country. Their economy was bad, of course, and they had very hard time, and they had to have a way to survive. So the neighboring country that was doing better financially, they figured by conquering those countries, they will have more resources coming into Germany, because once you conquer the country, it becomes part of Germany, so they can use the resources of those countries. But unfortunately for Germany, when the United States entered the war, they suffered a great defeat. And I believe that it was the United States, Great Britain, and France who entered the war and pushed Germany back. And they suffer really very serious defeat. That's why at the very appropriate point, Paul von Hindenburg, being a shrewd strategist for the German army, realized that there was no point to try to continue the war, because if he did, his soldiers would have been slaughtered. So he raised the white flag and admitted defeat. That's why Germany was slapped with a war reparation fee. So after that happened, of course, they signed the treaty, and Germany was paying the war reparation fee to all the countries that they had caused damage to. Now, while Hitler, remember we mentioned that while Hitler tried to overthrow the government because he wasn't happy with the way that things turned, now von Hindenburg actually decided to go and retire again. So right after the war, he saved those soldiers. So he figured that his time his service is no longer needed because the war is over. He turned the whole thing to the government. He's a very old man. In fact, when they called him back to help with the World War I, I believe that Paul von Hindenburg was already 66 years old. So, of course, after the war, there was no reason for him to stick around. So, in 1919, after he finished helping Germany, signed the treaty, he walks away from the army again. So, now, Hitler is trying everything possible to get hold of power, because in all fairness, if you following what his thought process, he was doing all that for the love of Germany. Now the approach was obviously a very aggressive authoritarian approach, but everything that he was doing was for the love of Germany. Now, if we take a look back here in our own country, you would make the same argument for Trump, because you would say that, well, if you take the slogan, "Make America Great Again," now, whether you agree with the approach or not, you would say that whatever he has in mind is for the love of the country. Whatever he has in mind is to help advance the country. Now, we can debate later about the intricacies of those of all those initiatives that Donald Trump had taken as to whether they really mean that. But for the time being, on the surface, what Adolf Hitler did in Germany, his approach is the approach of someone who loves his country and who is very angry about the direction of the country, who was very angry about the direction of the country, and who wanted the country to no longer be humiliated by the international community. So Paul von Hindenburg left the scene, and of course, again, as I mentioned, Adolf Hitler continued his pursuit for power. But in 1925, he was called again. Now, at the time that Paul von Hindenburg was called again back, he was already 84 years old. But he was called back because there was something going on in Germany that, I guess, it looks like there was some prescience in the minds of the government at that time, because they call Paul von Hindenburg back, this time not to serve in the armed forces, because the government noticed that there was something going on in Germany that was not good for Germany. Adolf Hitler was increasingly growing his influence in the country. More and more people were more and more, mostly young people, were joining the Nazi Party. Now, why did they call Paul von Hindenburg? Is because one aspect of his brilliance is the fact that he had won war that makes him almost an icon, that made him an icon in Germany. He was considered almost like a god. So he was admired in Germany. So when the people in power in Germany noticed that Adolf Hitler was growing in influence, in power, they fear that at some point the Nazi will become the dominant power in the country. And they knew there was only one person that could put an end to that, because he had more influence than Adolf Hitler. Ironic, isn't it? It's almost as if they saw the writing on the wall that only one individual could stop Adolf Hitler on his track. Because despite the fact that the Nazi was not the majority in Reichstag or in Reichsrat, but the increasing growth of power by Adolf Hitler, remember I mentioned earlier, he was a very charismatic person. He was also a good orator, and people loved that when Adolf Hitler talked. It's like he hypnotized people. It's like they want to hear more of what he had to say. And the reason is because what he had to say, that was something that actually resonated with them. the Treaty of Versailles was a humiliation for the German. The state of the economy, which was actually experienced by a number of those people, those young people, those Nazi, the poverty that they experience, the type of hardship that they experience. So when Adolf Hitler talked about that, they certainly understood and they certainly can relate to that. So Adolf Hitler used his charismatic approach, and he uses his ability, his oratory ability to charm the crowd and to increase that crowd. Now it's pretty much almost reminds you of two individuals, Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders, because if you remember that the kind of thing that Donald Trump was saying resonate with a number of individuals. And he keeps using those things over and over and over. Immigration is something that a lot of white people in the country actually always would go against immigrants coming in the country. That's another topic that we will address some other time, although they themselves, whether their parents, their grandparents, their ancestors came in the country as immigrants, but for a reason that becomes almost mysterious. Now they don't want immigrants in the country. So Adolf Hitler was a very charismatic person. Now, we cannot say the same thing for Donald Trump, but he knows how to create a villain in order to get everybody to rally behind him, because he automatically offers you a solution, a savior. Because if you have a villain, you need someone to defend you against a villain. And that's pretty much the same approach that Adolf Hitler used, that he created villain. Well, actually, I said created because those things that I mentioned, like the Treaty of Versailles, those things were already there. They were already around. So Adolf Hitler didn't create that, but he used that and shaped them as villain, because Treaty of Versailles becomes humiliation for the German. Now, we can argue both ways, because in order for the German army not to have been totally crushed, totally eradicated, then they had to make a compromise. And that's what General Paul von Hindenburg did. He made a compromise, said, okay, I'll save my soldier for a later date, a later time, but for the time being, we'll pay the fee. So, but Adolf Hitler is extreme, just like we observe with Donald Trump. There is no middle ground. Immigrants are bad. That's as simple as that. There is no middle ground, no explanation. There is no, well, there is a very small group that may become bad, because who can avoid that? And it's not just immigrants that become bad. There are plenty of people who actually act in a very bad way in the country. But Donald Trump is not going to focus on that, because that doesn't help. His supporters would not want to hear that. And that's exactly the same thing that Adolf Hitler did. He focused on the things that resonate with the people he was talking to. The Treaty of Versailles was considered a humiliation for the German. And that's what he used. That's what he kept pouncing on that. And then he used, of course, the Jewish lavish lifestyle in Germany, while the Germans scrape for food. he used that as also another villain that the German needs saving from. So you have the Treaty of Versailles, which is a humiliation for the German nation, for the country, for the people living in Germany. And you have the Jewish lavish lifestyle who control everything, who have luxury cars, luxury clothes, go to the luxurious restaurant, have maids, have butlers, in all the while that the German was scraping for food. So Adolf Hitler used that to his own advantage to rise in power. So they realized, the government realized, that nobody can really defeat Adolf Hitler. He was rising increasingly, and the young people were just behind him because they liked what he had to say. Very similar scenario here in the United States, because that's the aspect that nobody, no pundit, no politician or political strategist could put their fingers on, because they could not understand how in the world someone could be so vulgar, someone could be so ignorant of matters of government, someone could be so unprepared to be president, could have so many people following him. Now, contrast that to Adolf Hitler, who left the armed forces as a corporal. He never went up the rank. So you can say that he didn't achieve much. And if you have a chance to watch previous episode of this topic, I discuss about his lack of he's not an intelligent person. He wasn't an intelligent person, but in his autobiography, whether it's true or not, nobody would know. But in his autobiography, he made mention that he actually acted a certain way just to displease his father, because his father wanted him to go to a business school so that he could follow his father's footsteps, but he didn't want business school, he wanted to go to art school. So because of that, according to him, in his autobiography, he actually was flunking his classes so that his father could leave him alone. Whether it's true or not, we would never know, because later on, when his father tried to enroll him in what you would consider a good school for him to actually go and study what he actually liked, he wasn't accepted. And the reason he wasn't accepted is because he wasn't doing well in school, and there are criteria to be accepted in the school for you to study whatever you had in mind. So we would never know. But the bottom line is, despite the fact that he doesn't have any education to prove, he did go to school, he doesn't have the kind of education who would tell you that the reason he rose that high to power from the street, from being a homeless on the street, to joining the armed forces and living as a corporal, and actually manage to go all the way to become the person who would later on run Germany. That's unbelievable. But in all fairness, again, he was a very charismatic individual, and he knew how to tap into the crowd's emotion. he was charismatic. And on top of that, he knew the topic to use to keep his audience engaged. The Treaty of Versailles was one of them. The Jewish lavish lifestyle while the German was scraping for food was another one. And he was anti-communist, and of course he had this national pride that he was propping. Those are great combination for anybody to rally behind a leader. And what our fearless leader here did, pretty much the same thing. He knows the topic that would rally people behind him despite his lack of experience, despite his overwhelming ignorance on matters of governance, on matters of politics, on matters of the presidency. Pretty much the exact same scenario. You have two people 80 years apart who use the same approach to get to the same result. Now, they were afraid that if they let Adolf Hitler become the ruler of Germany, game over. They were afraid that was going to be the case. So they called on Paul von Hindenburg to come to save them. So even the German government could foresee something was not right about Adolf Hitler. So he's someone, a general, 84 years old, retired. He retired the first time. He came to help the country with World War I. He retired again. Now, it should have been time for him to just go and relax. But nobody else could save Germany from the rise of Adolf Hitler. And the only reason Paul von Hindenburg could manage that kind of feat is because, as I mentioned, he was considered almost like a god. He was admired in Germany. He was an icon. So the only person they trust that could stop Adolf Hitler right on his track was Paul von Hindenburg. So in 1925, they called on Paul to save Germany from Hitler. Paul von Hindenburg answered the call. Of course, he had to. Obviously, he retired as a general, and when the country needed him, it's not like the country didn't have any other general, but because they know of his brilliant strategy going to war, so they had to appeal to him. He answered. So now they realize that Germany is in another type of problem. So what should the government do? And they were afraid if Adolf Hitler became the almighty in Germany, game over. And they don't know if anybody would be able to stop him. So they call on Paul von Hindenburg, and Paul answered the call. What happened next? Stay with me. We will be right back to continue the conversation on Adolf Hitler versus Donald Trump. We are debating the similarities between Adolf Hitler and Donald Trump. Stay tuned. You are on the Fourth Branch program, the first and only program dedicated exclusively for those with common sense, a spirit of patriotism, and a dedication for a more perfect union. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
I'm Jeff Gannett, CEO of Macy's, and I wanted to take a moment of your time to thank you for being such an amazing customer, because I truly believe that Macy's customers are the greatest in the world. Recently, you said you wanted a simpler rewards program. Well, I'm here to say that we've heard you, and starting this month, we're introducing the new and improved Macy's Star Rewards, a reimagined, simpler rewards program starring you. You said you wanted more savings. All members at every level get 25% off any day you choose with Star Passes. You said you wanted free shipping. Gold status means getting free shipping with no minimum, plus the silver status benefit. You said you wanted better rewards. Platinum status means 5% back in rewards every day on all Macy's merchandise, no exclusions, plus gold and silver status benefits. We want Macy's customers to know they are the best customers in the world. And we want each and every one of our cardholders to know that with the new Macy's Star Rewards, it is your time to shine.
Meet the new Macy's Star Rewards, exclusive to cardholders. Discover your status today at Macys.com/Star Rewards.
I'm telling you, Michael Jordan himself was right here in my McDonald's. I fixed him the very first McJordan special.
Right, Bill.
I did. I took a quarter-pound of pure beef, smoked bacon, cheese, and some of my favorite barbecue sauce, and I named it the McJordan special.
Bill, the sandwich, definitely great.
Yeah, but you got the cooling with that story.
But it's true.
How you doing, Bill?
Hi, Michael.
Michael.
The McJordan Special for a limited time.
Whoa! That is some group of people, thousands. So nice. Thank you very much. That's really nice. Thank you. It's great to be at Trump Tower. It's great to be in a wonderful city, New York. And it's an honor to have everybody here. This is beyond anybody's expectations. There's been no crowd like this. We used to have victories, but we don't have them. When was the last time anybody saw us beating, let's say, China in a trade deal? They kill us. I beat China all the time.
Donald Trump has transformed America in ways no one could ever anticipate. One can only guess where the country will be at the end of his presidency. We have, however, captured the journey to the Oval Office in the book entitled Defiant for America. They said he didn't have the guts to run for public office. He proved them wrong. They said his presidential bid would not last a few weeks. He proved them wrong. They said he could not become the nominee. He proved them wrong. Get a copy of this book and follow Donald Trump in his journey to make America great again. Found at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, everywhere online. Get your own copy today. Don't go anywhere. The Fourth Branch program will return in just a moment. Join me here on the Fourth Branch at 10:30 a.m. and 6:30 p.m. every Saturday.
After reading several books based on presidents and on Obama specifically, I found that they're typically partisan. The Obama legacy targets the heart of the issue by giving credit to the president where it's due, but definitely coming down hard on Obama on his bigger failures, like his handling of the Syrian crisis.
If you are in college, going to college, you are an educator, a faculty member, or someone with interest in government or politics, The Obama Legacy is definitely a book to read.
My professor recommended The Obama Legacy.
A friend actually recommended The Obama Legacy.
I would highly recommend this book for anyone, whether for academic use or leisure reading.
I would recommend this book to anyone out there searching for an impartial and unbiased look into Barack Obama's tenure as president.
I would definitely recommend this book as a good read for both liberals and conservatives.
Whoa. Your one item would be the name your price tool?
It helps people save on car insurance. Why wouldn't it save me?
Why? What would you bring? A boat?
Huh.
Ignorance, they say, is the biggest threat to any democracy. Indeed, it is. Plato, a Greek philosopher born in 427 BC, said that ignorance is the root and stem of all evil. Today, members in the Republican Party wear ignorance as a badge of honor, while the rest of the country watch powerless the destruction of a country which was once the envy of the world. The media is the enemy of the country, said Donald Trump. The Democrat legislators are obstructionists for not going along with everything the president wants. The Department of Justice is biased for investigating corruption in the Trump administration. This is the United States of America. Any question?
Wayfair, you got just what I need. Everything from my home, you got it for me. I never see selection quite like this. Every color and size in my mind. They got every single thing on my list. And with 70% off, who knows what I'll find? Wayfair, you got just what I need. Everything from my home, you got it for me. Wayfair, and the shipping was free. Now my home's the home I want.
From all of us at Wayfair, find what you need today.
Hello everyone, I am MD and this is the Fourth Branch Project, the first and only program which is dedicated exclusively to those with common sense, a spirit of patriotism, and a determination for a more perfect union. The Fourth Branch Project seeks to emphasize country over party. Its primary objective is to restore interest in civic duty and involvement in social, political issues, discussion, debate, which might impact lives in this generation and quite possibly in future ones. Put differently, the Fourth Branch Project is a journey towards restoring America's greatness, where patriotism is the foundation of every decision, every policy, every word, every action. Said differently, it is a journey to save democracy in America. Stay with us. We will be right back. Paul von Hindenburg. The guy is 84 years old, but is a true German nationalist. The country engaged in a war, World War I. They call on him, he answered. But now he's 84 years old. They call on him not to wage war, but to save the country from someone they think is bad for the country. Will Paul von Hindenburg answer the call? That's a tiring age. Will he? Well, the answer is next Saturday at 10:30 a.m. Join me here on the Fourth Branch program, and we'll continue the conversation on debating similarities between Donald Trump and Adolf Hitler. You need to know history in order to prevent our country from repeating the mistake of the past. Thank you for watching. I hope you can join me next time on the Fourth Branch program. Have a lovely week. Bye.